Alright guys, in this video we're going to assemble this brickyard tower. It's an all wood structure, an entry-level craftsman kit made by Monster Model Works. I'll give a full review on everything at the end of the video about it, but for the most part it went together quickly without any issues and was a fun build. Stick around, I'll show you how I did it. Alright guys, so I opened the kit up and we got the first step we got to work on here. This underlay has to go on here, however on the underside. And what we're going to do is we're going to line this bottom section here up, it has no brickwork, right to the bottom of this window frame here. So that on this side you get something like this. And we're going to glue it in place and hold it down with something heavy. Put a couple drops of glue. Not much. And by the way, I'm using that canopy glue that you saw in the list in the beginning. This is by Evergreen Scale Models. Put small drops, nothing too heavy. Spread it evenly. Just like this. And now we'll make the adjustments from the back side. So what I'll do to keep this in place is I have a couple of spray cans. I'll just move that off to the side. There are 3 sides we have to do this on. And we'll do the same thing here on number 2. And that looks pretty good. This section is the only section that varied from the last 3 we did. This is what they call the door end. And this will have to be on the left side of the model. I'll put that off to the side. We'll put another spray can on it and we'll let that dry. So I've allowed the glue to dry on all 4 pieces. I've taken a strip of sandpaper and I've taped it on each side. I'm just going to knock off a little bit of the edge because what I want to do is get these pieces here as flush as possible. I've sanded these pieces already, these little corner pieces. What I'm going to do to adhere these aside of the glue is I'm going to run a piece of masking tape just around it to make sure it's secure. We're going to take a square and we're going to run the wall flush along the edge. And I'm just going to rub this down with my finger. And then I'm going to take my masking tape. And this is what I'm going to use as a clamp. And I'm going to run a strip on one side. So 2 strips of the masking tape should be enough for a makeshift clamp here. And that looks pretty decent. That piece is complete. And we're going to do the same with the other 2 pieces. We're then going to cut the bottom section right here. And then we'll adhere the 4 walls together and then move on from there. Let's just go over what we've done so far. So the first thing that was required of us was to put the underlays on. Then the next step was to put the corner posts on, which we've done. The corner posts were a little longer on each end, so we cut those down with the saw. And the next thing I did, because we're going to have to glue these sections together, is I laid a square on the table, taped it, and we are going to glue these 2 sides together to match these 2 sides right here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll take the Evergreen canopy glue and I'm going to put a little bit along this corner. And what we'll do is we'll stand it up along the square, making sure I got the edges right, and we'll put them together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the masking tape, and we're just going to use this as a means of holding everything together true and square. Now we've got that corner set. After that's dry, we'll come in and we'll put both corners together and make a 4-corner structure, and we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so I allowed the glue plenty of time to dry. Now all we got to do with this part is mate these 2 ends together. And we're going to do that again with the canopy glue. We're going to put a nice bead all along the edge here. And we'll do the same on the other side. Being that these 2 sides we know are square, mating them together isn't too difficult. keep it tight. And we'll go back and check the other side, which looks pretty good. So there's the base of the structure, complete. This model is ready for its next step, which are these parts right here. And they're going to go over this part right here. The instructions say that we have to put the sides on first, these short sides on first, because the next strip that goes along here will hide that edge. Okay, so with both sides put together on the short side here, our next step is to put the final overlay on this side and on this side. All the glue is on. Last and final piece will be this one right here. Start a little lower than where we really want it, which will say like right about here. And then we'll just slide it up so all that extra glue smears down the back side. So there's all four sides of the overlays. We'll just give that a minute to dry, and then our next step, we're going to start painting the brick on this. Alright, so since the brick overlays have had a chance to dry, my next step was to put an overall coating on the entire model, which is where I use the chalked chiffon cream by Rust-Oleum. The next step I'm going to do, individually highlight many bricks all throughout the entire model, so that when I go over it with a lighter red, brick red or barn red, those darker colors are muted some, but allow for some color to come through, which you can see in the model here. If you look carefully, these dark spots that you see are the bricks that are painted in a black or burnt umber in my case. I'm just going to paint individual bricks. I'll show you the end result of the bricks prior to moving forward. And then once we do that, we'll start with the sponging. Alright guys, so I highlighted the bricks I said I was going to. The next step here is going to be to do the sponge work. We'll start with the sea sponge. So dip, and we'll get some of it off here. I don't want heavy coats of this stuff. These inlays here that we got, we'll have to dry brush a lot of that when we put a darker color in. But as far as just highlights, that's doing pretty good, just like so. I'm not looking to entirely coat this model, just highlights. It's safe to say that most of it you won't even see come through in the end. And you can already see the darker brown is being covered quite nicely with this this color we're putting on right now. I think this sea sponge is going to do pretty good. Once I get done with this color, I'll rinse it. We'll get it ready for another color. Harvest orange will be our next color. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush. And dry brushing is just taking the paint and putting very little amount on the end of the brush itself, so there's barely any color coming through. But I just want to dry brush these corners in somewhat. Putting the primer, the chiffon cream color, the chalky paint that we used earlier, acts as a great barrier to prevent warping, which these pieces of wood here are so thin. They tend to warp quite easily. Okay, so for the darker tone, what I did was I took three colors. I took a little bit of the chestnut, the barn red, and the harvest orange. Made our own color right here. So we'll just go all over the entire kit. Alright, so I guess we're at a point now where dry brushing is going to have to be the technique. I did 3 sides already and dry brushed. A pretty nice blend. And what I have left to do is this side. I just wanted to take a moment to show you how I did it with the dry brush technique, which is barely any paint on the brush, and then just applying a light coat of that color. And we're ready to do the next step, which is to adhere the concrete faces here. There's a couple that we have to put all the way around. Okay, so we got all the sections cut out of that main sprue. The model calls for us to put the short sides in first, and then the longer sides will cover on the edges here. Our next step will be to do the trim right through here. Our next step will be to put the base trim on. It appears to be pretty good. The next step was the doors. And I painted it with this green. So let's get that put into place. Okay, so we got all the trim work done. So our next step on this model is going to be to go over it with a sealer. And in this case, I'm going to use the True Color Dull Coat, so that I can come back at it with the spackling. So our next step here will be to seal the model, let it dry thoroughly, and then we'll come back at it with some grout. Okay, so our airbrush is hot, and like I said, we'll just go over this entire kit with some dull finish to help seal in the color that we put on already. Alright, we'll just finish up here with a final coat. Alright, so we'll clean the gun, we'll let that dry for a couple hours, and we'll come back and start the grout. Okay, so now that we've completely sealed the model and have given it enough time to dry thoroughly, our next step here will be to apply the grout. And we're going to use for grout some of the Alex plus spackling in a cup of water, and we're going to thin this out thoroughly. I want it to be a little thicker than the consistency of milk. So now that I got that mixed up, I'll put that off to the side. I want to get a couple of paper towels. I don't want a lot of this mortar on the model. So what we'll do is we'll start with the top side here so I can get broad strokes right in there. Just like that. And we'll just pat dry. I have a side that's already done, and I've already started to add some of the weathering with chalk. And we'll just continue to add as we go here. Definitely adds quite a layer to it. I don't think that looks too bad. So I wanted to do this step prior to putting the windows in. I didn't want to get any of the spackle on the glass. It will fog it. So the instructions next step is to paint the window frames. So I've already painted these. And the way I painted them was to make it look like a weathered appearance. I didn't put a very heavy coat on. Made it look like the paint was old. I don't want my windows to look brand new. Okay, so all the window frames have been painted. And as you can see, they're not a dark coating. There's more of a patina effect to it here. This has had a chance to dry, so I'm going to move them off to the side. Just get in there and peel the adhesive backing off. And then you take the window itself, line it up with the bottom of the glazing, and just stick it into place. To get it off of the back here, the glazing is held together in 2 locations, one here and one here, and I just pop them out simply with the razor, just like so. For these bigger windows, there are sections of plexiglass that are peel and stick, and will go into the model on the back side like so. So I put all the lower level windows in and the top window here. To do these lower level windows was very difficult to do on camera because I had to constantly take it off screen and on screen. to adjust for shadows so I can make sure the lineup was just right. On these sides, I fogged over the glass and I went onto the inside surface and I created a circular motion like so until I had a nice fog to it. But for the tops, I want to keep these absolutely clean and pristine because that's where a lot of the action takes place in the towers to begin with. So what I did first is I took the piece of plexiglass and I pulled off the very edge piece of film. And you can see the edges are nice and crisp. And I found that leaving the center film in, the window self-aligns. You can actually feel it fall into place. So I'll bring it back over and I'll line it up as best I can here. This isn't recommended by the manufacturer, but I found this to be the simplest way. Is I took a little bit of super glue and I ran it along the inside against the Lexan. Not much. And then I came back in and I peeled the final layer of the backing off here. Giving that an extra second or two to dry. And trying not to touch it at all. I came back around on the other side. So now that I'm pretty sure the super glue is dry enough where I can flip it over and work on it, I then went to take off this piece of covering here. I just pull that off gently. This window has a adhesive backing. So I just get the blade underneath and I pull off the film that's on it. And I come back over to the model and I find the corner and I just rest it into the corner and work it all the way across. And that is it. So the next step will be the roof. So my next step in the model was to take the laser board and fold all four corners up 90 degrees, which were pre-scored. And then I glued them into place with just a little CA, some super glue. And then I went over and I painted all the corners with the drab green that we've been using on the windows. That's the main color theme through the model. I also painted the soffit area. So the next step will be to place the roof in here after we do all the shingles, which I'll show you in our next step. I've used some styrene to hold it in place, and as well as this drops of super glue along the edges to make sure it's secure. And now that I have it secure, next step will be the shingles. So the first step to getting the shingles placed on the roof was to take all of the edges and to place the shingles upward, whereas now every other shingle following these lines on the chipboard will face down all around. Now that we got the base down and the first line of shingle down, each shingle will continue to go downward, but will form a diamond. The two ridge strips put on, two more, and the peak. Alright guys, so I got the roof completely finished, and I had all the capping done here on the ridges. I'm going to leave the chimney out. However, the chimney is painted and ready to go. And I'm leaving the chimney out of it because this model is going to be sold, and I want the buyer to be able to put it in. I don't want there to be a shipping incident. And we're not going to paint the stairs or the chimney cap. We'll let the buyer do that. But the roof fits well. All right, it sets right in onto the gutter. All right, so like I said, I was going to give you a full review on it. The kit was very well packaged. Everything was packaged in a step-by-step process. So as it requested you to open certain bags, those were the items that needed to be used immediately on the model. It is an S scale. They do make them in 3 different scales. It's an all-wood structure. All the parts were laid out in the sprues and numbered in the instruction packet, which were easy to match up. They popped out of the sprue quite easily. They were attached by a very fine piece of wood. This is all basswood. The directions on this kit were crystal clear, easy to read, step by step. They gave you some ideas for painting techniques, which we adopted a few of and did others of our own. Gave you color ideas and all that. Told you how to do the roofing, which are individual tiles that are stuck on, which went together perfectly. It folded up perfectly. There were a few things I left out that you can see on the model, which is one, the chimney. It's a completed chimney. I'm just leaving it out because this particular model I am going to sell. Staircase, which is 3D printed, is done, as well as the chimney cap, which is 3D printed. So all the parts were there. There was nothing missing. And again, it was easy to take out of the sprue. There was no splits to any of the wood. The wood accepted paint quite easily. The windows were pristine. They're peel and stick for the most part. Some of them you put the window in first and then you peel and stick the window backing to it. Yeah, my suggestion is if you're looking to step it up a notch from plastics, injection molded, styrenes and all that, Monster Model Works offers great kits. They're affordable. The instruction packets are incredibly well laid out. You know, it builds a skill level up. I would definitely suggest giving it a shot. MonsterModelWorks.com. I think that's going to bring you to an advertising platform. Larkspur.com. In Larkspur, on the side menu, is his company, Monster Model Works. And yeah, I suggest taking a look at it. They have lots of kits. They have quarter kits as well, which I call them quarter kits. They're backdrop kits that are about an inch deep and full of detail. I'd say give them a shot, take a look at it, and then see what you think. So if you enjoyed this video, you know, be sure to hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, stay connected and hit the subscribe. I do have quite a few more coming out. Thanks for watching.